In the early 1970s, the performance of most sedan cars was a little limited, unless you had a budget that wasn't. And the idea of a fast four-door that could embarrass supercars was largely the stuff of fiction. But in the basement of BMW's development workshops, a group of engineers was working on a new recipe, and the result was just three little colours. Many people believe that these two cars represent the very pinnacle of BMW M, the E39 M5 and the E46 M3. But are they? Well, to answer that question, I need to go back to the beginning. This is the E28 BMW M5, the very first M5 of them all. And in 1984, it was the fastest sedan car on the planet. Under its bonnet is an M-Power 24-valve straight six with 3.5 litres, and it produces 210 kilowatts. Now I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound like a lot by today's standards, but back in the early 80s, that was enough to get this car to 100 kilometers an hour in just 6.5 seconds. That's Golf GTI territory by today, but this car still feels incredibly quick. And that's because the way it delivers its power. It revs really happily to 6,500 RPM, but it's also got loads of low-down torque as well. By today's standards, this is still a really lovely, smooth and refined and sophisticated engine, but back in the 1980s, it would have blown everyone's minds. Top speed was 250 kilometers an hour, but the whole package is just amazingly well balanced. This car is looked after impeccably by BMW Classic, but in twisty stuff there's a lovely balance to the steering, the brakes have an almost Porsche feel to them, the chassis is really well tuned, it's comfortable, great ride quality, it doesn't matter whether you're driving on lovely straight roads like this or finding some more twisty, exciting stuff. I just can't imagine what people thought of this car when it launched in the early 80s, and it started a revolution for BMW. What happened after the M5 is history, but this car isn't quite the beginning. The E28 M5 was not the first car to wear the M colours. 4 years before it, BMW launched this, the pivotal and quite stunning M1, the company's first true supercar. It had an engine almost identical to the M5's, but mounted behind the front two seats. A top speed of 265 kilometers an hour and show-stopping looks. The M1 certainly put BMW M on the global stage, especially when the model spawned the M1 Pro Car factory racer and dominated the American IMSA GTO series. But we're still not at the very start just yet. Go back another 2 years and you'll find the first ever BMW to have an M in its model name. Based on the company's first generation 5 Series E12, it eventually evolved into this car and the more widely known 1980 M535i, the car that previewed the first full-fat 5. But it and every M-badged car since owes its existence to this car. The 1976 BMW 530 MLE. Frustrated at missing out on many of the high-performance models sold in other regions, BMW's Pretoria plant decided to build its own, and the result was the 530 Motorsport Limited Edition. A little over 100 were built for homologation, and its existence was largely unknown outside South Africa. But this humble machine not only cast the M into a road car, the connection it forged between the road and racetrack remains at the centre of the M mantra to this day. It was racing that actually provided the very genesis of BMW M with the 1972 3-litre CSL, even though it didn't wear an M on its hind. But since then the brand has gone on to represent some of the most iconic cars of all time. A year later, the 2002 Turbo was the first road car to wear the blue, violet and red. After the original M5, BMW applied the same principles to its second generation 3 Series, and the incredible E30 M3 was born. The CSL badge returned 31 years after the first for a special version of the E46 M3. Petrol heads around the world couldn't get enough, and the popularity guaranteed a succession of M models with each new generation. Along the way, there have been a number of incredible concepts that never quite made it to production. Many fans fawn over the rare E34 M5 Touring, but what about a convertible? BMW never made a production M8 in E31 form, but it nearly did. A Z3 with a V12? An E30 Ute? An E53 X5 with a Le Mans Racer V12 under its bonnet? The Karl Lagerfeld L7? All examples of how sometimes M has stood for madness. From its formation in 1972 until the mid-80s, M was a relatively small outfit, existing as a company within a company. But in 1986, BMW M moved into its current headquarters in Garching, where the next generation of M cars and racing machines are still developed in parallel to this day. My arrival coincided with the completion of both new M4 GT4 and M4 GT3 factory race cars. And this was one of the first times anyone outside the company had heard its Turbo 6 fired up. And while the GT4's details are more secret, I can offer this tantalising glimpse. The site is also where many bespoke customization options are carried out for BMW's most particular customers, under the manufacturer and individual programs. Here, customers can create a highly personalised BMW with almost limitless possibilities. A good example is the recent M850 Night Sky special project that takes actual meteorite for some of its interior trims. From a secret Skunk Works passion project to renowned international performance player, BMW has come a long way in 50 years. Now, if you want to get an idea of where a contemporary BMW M brand is, look no further than this. Revealed just yesterday here at the Concorso d'Eleganza in Italy, this is the new M4 CSL. And it's this car that perfectly represents where the BMW M brand is in 2022. This is just the third time BMW has forged the coveted CSL badge. The first one, of course, was the E9 3-litre CSL, or as some people called it, the Batmobile. Then again for the E46 M3 CSL, and now this. The first version had some similarities. For example, it had a 3-litre straight-six petrol engine under the bonnet, just like this one. But that had 150 kilowatts, whereas this has 405. The L in its badge stands for lightweight, which means this car, through various means, has had 100 kilos stripped out of its curb weight and weighs just 1,625. And with that, you get an expected boost to performance. This is the fastest serial production BMW to ever lap the Nürburgring. But there's similarities. A 3-litre petrol engine under the bonnet of the earliest CSL and this one. What BMW needs to do now is move on and evolve. If this is the BMW M of today, what does the future look like? This is the BMW iX M60, the latest important transition into BMW's electric future. It's not the first electric vehicle to wear an M badge on its boot, but it is the fastest. BMW says this car will do the dash from 0 to 100 in just 3.8 seconds, fast for a big SUV, but believe me, it feels a lot quicker. It's a step along the way, a very exciting step. This car has got amazing performance, styling to match, tons of equipment level. And it is absolutely remarkable. Does this mean BMW's glorious hand-built M-Power petrols are doomed and the future of M will be silent? Even a force as powerful as BMW M will one day make a full transition to zero emissions. But CEO Frank van Meel explains why there won't be an electric halo for M anytime soon.
Well, I think right now it's not possible yet to do high-performance vehicles purely electric. As long as we have no solution for long-distance racing, for GT racing, it makes no sense if it doesn't work, right? Because that is our promise that we give with the M high-performance vehicles. Now, of course, you can already see that everything is going towards electric. So at the end, we have to find solutions also for high performance and racing. There has to be a solution for GT racing that is purely electric by the end of this decade. And that's why we're looking at that in racing and at the same time in our high performance cars.
For now, BMW will continue to headline its most potent machines with combustion power, gradually transitioning into electric with the help of plug-in hybrids. The next M5 will use an electrified V8, as will the all-new XM large SUV. The E46 M3 and E39 M5 that we started with represent a pinnacle of sorts in BMW's storied history. But I don't think it's fair to label them the very best. Over half a century, the company has evolved progressively, offering something that explores new ground while all the time honouring its past. In many ways, the XM is just as impressive as the original 3-litre CSL or M1. And in 5 decades, the company has wheeled out such an incredibly diverse range of vehicles, it's safe to say there really has been something for everyone. That's why, for me, the excitement of driving something with the tricolour badge is almost equalled by the anticipation of what will come next. And my favourite M car? Well, that would have to be the one that I've not yet driven.